Our first speaker tonight is Ken McKay, who is standing in front of me. He's a professor from Management Sciences, and he's going to talk about team formation.
Are we mic'd? Awesome. How many of you started class this morning at 8:30? Long day, okay? So I'm going to cause her a bit of heartache because I'm just going to wander around. This talk is applicable to both what you're doing for fourth year design projects and hopefully some ideas for when you graduate, okay? So I'll probably not try to get in the ways a lot. So I'm just going to quickly go through. So for me, a team is a group at any time. You can have sled dogs, whatever, oxen. The key thing to remember is not all teams are the same. Okay, what you've done on co-op is not the same as what has happened to you on your team projects, and everything is different. So how many of you already got your teams together? You can leave now. Okay, but this may give you room for thought or things to think about as how to mitigate it. If you've already got teams chosen, there's ways to control them better. So basically what you have to always worry about is individuals, policy structures, and rules of engagement. That's all kind of BS stuff. The academic project terms, this is what, how many every term you got projects, correct? Now, typically they're lovely. You start and finish on time, right? You start beginning of term, you finish before exams. Capstone 2 terms. You have short-term impacts. None of you are actually going to kill your whole career through a term project, right? None of you are actually going to get fired probably because of a term project. You're not going to lose millions of bucks for a company because of a project. There's limited impact, right? And no one has the skin, like no one really owns the project that's going to get fired. So luckily, often in academic project terms, how many of you were able to pick your teams? Pick somebody to work with? Okay, that usually doesn't happen in industry. You either inherit a team or you're told, here are the 8 people, use them. So you don't typically have a lot of decision making. You usually don't get to pick your topic. You're told, this is what you do. This is your project. And guess what? You're held responsible and you can be fired if you screw up. All right, so that's what happens. So, but in reality, on a project team, you're all peers. You're all nice to each other. You really can't tell anybody what to do, right? So you can try to tell them where to go, but nothing else. So you're basically part-time. In the real world, guess what? It's 40, 60 hours a week working on a project. So I'm just trying to point out some differences for you to remember about. Now, some profs actually go out of the way to make it nice for you. I don't. When I assign teams, it's purely random. I don't try to balance anything. What's interesting, what we've noticed from the professor side is some just like to just pass it. Okay, there's always people that want to get the A's, get the better, but some students just say, I just want the credit, no one ever fails the project, right? I used to teach at another university once, and the students told me, one group said, students never fail a group project. They discovered otherwise. Basically, if a project sucks, it sucks, okay? And I'm not afraid to fail a team. That's what happens in the real world. If it sucks, you hear about it. But usually in academia, we're nice, and you have to admit, it's hard to fail a group project in engineering. Anybody here ever fail a group project, actually? Don't put up your hands, don't admit. Okay. So co-op teams are different because, again, you're coming in partway through or you're given perhaps something that will fit. You may be picking up where others left off, leaving stuff to others. Co-op terms are artificial. It's 4 months. How many of you discovered that it wasn't until your 3rd month you discovered really where the bathroom was? That you actually understood what the company was doing, what the product was, who to talk to. It can take 2-3 months before that happens. Anybody experience that? So there's a whole bunch of different things. You're going to be managed as a risk. One observation, I often have co-op students come up. I was a co-op student here way back, way back. A lot of students come up and say, oh, I had a terrible work term. They just let me sit and do nothing. It was boring. You know, they didn't tell me what to do. Okay, there are some bad employers, but there's also some good employers. The good employers will do that and see what you do, because they've invested maybe 20 minutes hiring you on a work term. They don't know you from anybody. They don't know actually what you're going to do. The good employers will actually hire you. Sorry, you're all seniors now. I should have told you this when you were in 1A. The good employers will actually test you and give you nothing to do. They're going to see how much initiative you have. What are you going to do when you're not told to do X? And that will define the rest of your work term. Anybody ever feel that kind of experience? I see a bunch of nodding heads. The good bosses will test you. I don't know you. I'm not going to give you something important to do if I don't know you. Am I stupid? Right? I'm not going to trust a co-op student with $1 million project. I'm going to test you first. So that's what happens in teams. You get tested. Anyway, moving along. You don't go to all attending. You may think you're actually have a vote, but you're not a peer. Sorry. You don't have to live with the decisions. You get to walk away. So there's a whole bunch of things. Graduation is different. Oh, these slides are going to be available, so I'm not going to go through everything. You guys can pick this up after. But projects can be 2, 3, and 5 years. Over here, industry folks, not every project is 4 months, is it? Not likely. There's different impacts. You know, what's going to happen? I work in healthcare these days and law enforcement. If you screw up, bad things can happen. There's different impacts. There's different agendas. Everybody wants to go at different levels. But anyway, I'm just not going to go through all this crap. You can read it. But the point is, teams are different. Project teams are different than what happened on co-op. If you think about it, compare the two. And when you graduate, it's different again. So anyway, don't assume all are the same. Don't assume you learned everything while as a student. Don't assume you really understand anything. And just because you're a good team player at one type doesn't mean you can do something else. Okay? So, getting to be about where I wanted to be at this point, there's 10 recommendations for good team formation that I can give you. You do it objective-based, if you can. That's basically, you look at what the team has to deliver at the end and along the way, and you figure out what you need. It's like a voyage of discovery in the 1700s. You're going on the boat to Hawaii or the Arctic. Guess what? You need a different boat. You need a different crew. You need different people at different points in time to do the journey. So you actually do it objective-based. Everybody, this is the best solutions, by the way. Everybody understands what they have to do and when to do it. Everybody helps each other, works as a team. No prima donnas, no egos. Again, this is the wish list. Doesn't mean it happens. Number 4, everybody has an actual chance to contribute in their own way. Typically what you're doing has never been done before, so you want to adjust and adapt as you go. Number 6, you want to have some degree of democracy, but democracy has to recognize ownership, so the keywords are in red. For example, your team design has to consider risks. What happens in the middle of your term project? The mean, nasty professor swaps the team lead out and moves them to another team. Has that ever happened to you on a project? Where the team lead is swapped out, totally. I see one head going up. My students this term will find out what that feels like. I'll be swapping the team leads at a random point during the term. I have 18 teams, round she goes. Because that's what happens in the real world. The team, my first job after university, I got hired, the guy who hired me got fired after 2 weeks, me joining the term. So I had to deal with everything new. So you have to do good team design. Team personnel are worthy and vetted. Oh, team design, allowing for risk. Another thing you have to be prepared for, and by the way, I put this in my course description and project so students can't claim that I'm sandbagging them later, right? But when you go to present, how many of you done the presentations where everybody does a 1 minute, it's a 5-minute talk, everybody does 1 minute, then somebody else gives another minute, then somebody else does another minute. I randomly pick somebody at time of presentation to present the whole thing. I randomly pick somebody to answer every question as well. at the time of the talk. They're warned at the beginning. So what do you think happens in the team compared to the normal team activities? What do you think happens? Anybody? What happens in the team when I play this game compared to your normal team activities? The normal team is you do the coding, you do the presentation, you don't know what she coded, right? You do the write-up, you have no clue what they coded and what's going to be on the presentation. That happens with a lot of teams, I think. I call it outsourcing. Oh, there's a lot of, yeah, we got away with that, yeah. So what happens in the real world is you can get stuck in the traffic, you're sick, everybody has to at least do good enough. So when I'm done with my teams, everybody knows something about what the darn project was and what was going on. That's how you deal with risk and mitigate it. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. Everybody needs work ethic, blah, 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 has time to practice. These are your nice 10 things to do. So what? The trouble is when things aren't going your way. And I want to focus on the bad things. So this is the fun slides. How have student teams screwed up? Any ideas? First of all, there's a caveat. There's an exception to everything. You know, in the real world, you can't say everything's going to be 100% no matter what. There's always exceptions. How many of you ever made a team based on living arrangements? Yeah, no one's going to admit it too much, but I see a few hands. And I've been around this long enough to know that every term, it's handy to just make teams based on who you're living with. Study buddies. How many create teams based on study buddies? There's a few of those. Based on friends. Based on taking advantage. Okay, no hands on this one. Teams based on taking advantage of somebody. Okay, there's always the malicious blankety blank that is trying to, okay, shall we say, the ones with the E's and the F sucking up to the A's and the B's, trying to get on a good team. This never happens, right? You never see this? You folks don't think we know this from the front of the room? We know all this stuff is happening, right? These are problems. Typically, long haul, long run, these ways of choosing teams don't work. Okay? You may be lucky, but they don't work that much. So question is, do you feel lucky? But we see a lot of mistakes made by this. This has nothing about skill. It has nothing about outcomes. It has nothing about what you actually have to deliver. It's strictly about, oh, I want to go out partying and it's easier if we're in the same apartment. Or we have the same shower or use the same towels. I don't know. But generally, we won't worry about this point. But the other ones, can I show a general? Any time in the last 4 years, have you ever had a team based on those things? Yeah, this is typical, okay? So, how many of you found out that things can be messy working with friends? You really don't want to tell them it sucks. You really don't want to tell them they're not working their hours matching you and stuff like that. So, friends are really hard to work with. Now, if the team is given, you may choose a topic, all right? What you need to do is do your inventory and know what the team can deliver based on what the course is or objective is, all right? If the team is given, the worst thing you can do is having somebody that says, oh, I love this idea. I did it on my co-op work term, or I got a real passion about X. You first of all need to know what the team can deliver and scale appropriately. How many of you are working on something that somebody worked on their work term? Or somebody came to the table already saying, I got this really great idea. I just love this. I'm passionate about doing X. Any of you have a project like that set up already? I see some, and they're going, oh shit. So people forget to pick the team's ability. If you've got a hockey team, you're not about to go play basketball. If you get that analogy. Think about how stupid it is. You want objectives. There are some good books about how to pick a topic if you have freedom of choice. By that means you choose a topic that, okay, capstone. A capstone is supposed to demonstrate your mastery in what you have learned through your program, right? If you choose a topic that does not allow you to demonstrate mastery of your program, you chose the wrong topic. To demonstrate mastery, it should be more than one thing. There's an old man phrase called one-trick pony. Does anybody know what a one-trick pony is? You do your whole capstone on one theme, one thing. You're indicating skill in one thing only. Do you think your professor is going to be happy when you demonstrate, oh, in 4 years I learned one thing? There's one idea I got to bring into my capstone. That's not going to go over well. So if you're choosing a topic, you want to choose something that you can demonstrate multiple skills. I want to demonstrate my problem analysis skills. I want to demonstrate my design skills as a team. I want to do multiple things. That also makes the presentations better, symposiums better, and helps you. So you have to think about what are your objectives and what you want to do. You really need to understand the criteria by which you are judged. So usually at a symposium, I'll be the one that comes up and says, tell me about your project and tell me about the courses that impacted what you did. Where did you get the ideas? What did your education do to help this project? Because I'm expecting, a lot of the programs do phone apps, software, right? You can almost hit, how many programs do phone apps these days as part of a symposium? A lot. You see a lot of phone apps. I expect to see a management engineering app to be different than a software engineering app, different from a computer engineering app, different than a CS, systems design. There should be something about your discipline that shows that it is different. Does that make sense? Like it should be different. So unfortunately, a lot, again, this is how you screw up. You pick a topic you liked. You pick a topic you had experience with. That's the wrong thing to do. It's a course project. Personally, I don't care if you like it. Your goal is to demonstrate your mastery and do it well that we can judge you. I really don't care if you like what you're doing. I really don't. That's not the problem. Your job is to show that you know your engineering discipline. Suck it up. Choose a topic, nail it. So what I often find is you don't scale it right. You've got 3 or 4 students, 5 students, whatever the number is. You don't scale it and you don't scope it right to be able to pull it off. Or they don't know how to use the resources. So I'll give you a tip. If you've got, say, 5 people, you take your best person and you don't really allocate them. This is a super tip. You take your absolute best person and don't give them a lot to do. You use them to go do the research. You use them to go do the problem solving. You get them to stabilize stuff. You get them to be the people going out ahead that are in high risk, but they sort things out so everybody else can just go like this, all right? If all the risks, everything else is taken care of, the whole team can just go nice, predictable, successful. That's what you keep. I've done this for about, when did I start doing this? 1981? This technique. It has worked every time. You don't allocate your best, and you can actually do the math. If you're into planning and scheduling, you can actually show the most capable resources you schedule last because they stabilize everything. I can show you the math, but you probably don't want to see more math today. But there's actually mathematical theory that supports that approach. But that is what you can do with people. But usually when I see people have 5 people, they never think about just keeping one person as the toolsmith, as the researcher, as the problem solver. They allocate everything up. So think about it. It's one of the best tips I can give you. Yeah, and ones that don't include slack and risks. Okay, if you're going to be really good at project management and doing this in industry, you don't schedule it for the last minute. You don't do all-nighters in industry. You're going to do that 1 or 2, and then you're going to get fired. So learn how to plan, learn how to schedule, learn how to get her done on time, get it done, quality control. You do not schedule an industry until the last minute, correct? You may pull it off once or twice by accident, but it's not going to work for you long term. You're going to really annoy the boss. Bosses don't like heartburn, acid indigestion, taking Tums, and other things. They don't want to hear, I worked all night. They don't want to hear that. They want to know that you did the last change 3 days ago. They want to hear that you've stabilized and tested it 3 days ago. So even for my 1As, the actual deadline to get the project done is a week or 2 weeks before the end of term. So I don't wait for the last day of term, last day of classes. It's due earlier. So I force them to have it done beforehand. Did I say the students don't like me? So continuing, you want some diversity. You don't want everybody thinking the same. You want some, okay, this is why you don't want to work with your friends, your buddies, the people that you hang with all the time. I love you, you love me, Barney song. Everybody here know the Barney song from kids? Is that too old? But you want to have some challenge. You want to do it respectfully with evidence. But you don't want the same ideas. You want an outsider. You want some stuff going on there. The teams that just love each other and just do exactly the same thing, you end up with something like that thing down at the... Anybody here been to the Crystal Park down at the Royal Ontario Museum? Nah, forget it. Bad example. Go down, you'll see it's dysfunctional. That's because they all loved each other. Okay. Oh, that's another point. Architects and software designers, I can speak from that side, you should not love your design. You should not have a personal, emotional attachment with what you're designing. You have to be able to take criticism, you have to be able to throw it in the garbage and start over again. So you should never do a personal attachment to what you're doing. Too many bosses, we're wrapping up. You just need one person. You cannot, if you have a team of 4, you don't have 4 designers. I'm sorry. Suck it up. You assign responsibility just like you would in the real world, and everybody does that one thing. You do not fight and argue all the time. You assign responsibility and you do it. The groups who have 4 architects, 4 designers, 4 everybody doing everything, usually have a hard time of it. And if you do that in industry, you're going to be very unhappy. So you have to allocate and have a team lead. So you have to distribute roles. You can rotate roles. So there's different ways of, the way they screwed up, they distributed the roles and didn't change. Or some people try to do a project manager of the week, where it's a couple of weeks, you're the project manager, then you're the project manager, then you're the project manager, then you're the project manager. Anybody have a team do that? I've seen that done a few times. Don't. I've seen some teams do no roles. Oh, we don't need a project manager. We don't need an architect. We don't need one of those. Don't. You need the roles if you're going to pull this off. So 101, you will never have a perfect team. So I've been coding since I was 15, which makes it 50 years now. So I've actually been coding for the last 50 years. I've never had a perfect team. So that's life. So deal with it. You have to plan, mitigate, and it's better to deal with it earlier than later. What you want to do is see where you're out of alignment. What doesn't fit? I got the wrong number of people. I got the wrong skills. You know, I got a problem I want to fire, but I can't get rid of. Like, you want to deal with it and mitigate it and control it. But you will never have a perfect team. If you ever do, I guess I had one. I was on one really great team. That was 1978 through 1981. I haven't been on one since. Relish it. It was an amazing experience. I learned so much on it. I was junior, I was working with a world's expert, and I was working with another person that was awesome, and I learned so much from being on that one team. But I've never had it happen again. So if you got a good team, really, really work on it. And I was supposed to be done at 5:45, 5:41. Questions? So if there's anybody here from management engineering, they're going, oh God, no, no. What did he just, oh, no, no. Yeah.
Okay. You talked about kind of dividing up roles because it's important for people to, not be rotating roles all the time and so on. Doesn't that kind of contradict with what you were saying earlier about like when you go to a presentation, you may want to ask someone all the questions, for example?
Okay, good question. The question was, you're assigning roles, but you're not rotating them. I like to do a paired programming style, which is even in any organization. You got the main project manager, but you have somebody shadowing and helping. Okay, you can mathematically show that if you're doing skills, like say I'm doing a factory, I can do car A and B, then B and C, C and D. Like you rotate, you do two. If something happens to you, there's still two people that know what you're doing. Something happens to you, there's that person and that person that knows what you're doing. So you use the paired programming style, but you have a major person responsible for being the PM, but somebody knows what's going on in case they're sick. That's how you do it. But you don't need to know everything. Not everybody needs to know totally the PM stuff. But at the status meetings, you make sure people know what are the main issues and what's going on. People will know if the main presenter is sick, all right? But you have to be able to bullshit it. I mean, you need to know how to present it well enough that people will understand, okay? Sorry about that. Taurus excretus. Anybody know Latin? Taurus excretus? Yeah, and at the back. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
How do you deal with delegating roles in really small teams? Like
if it's 2 or 3, if you're given the team versus creating the team, it's different. You have to scope it out. You have to know how many hours are there. Like when I design a course, I assume about 144 hours per student for a course all in to get an average mark, average student, average mark. So you kind of scope it. In the real world, it's slightly different. But you just do the best you can with what you got at the end of the day. But any other questions before I hang up the mic? Again, Chris has the slide decks. I imagine they'll be available. Probably should edit and censor the video.
Yeah, we'll have time to do that. Anyways, thank you, Ken, for presenting. And we have a little story.
Thank you.